Hey everyone, Brad here from the CoronaCast. Before we get started into episode 2, I kind of want to go over a few things. This episode's a bit different because we use Google Hangouts as a method to interview Dr. Merritt, who is our special guest for the episode. Google Hangouts was kind of tough to get a hang of. It's different than Discord, which is what we will usually use for this, and so the graphics will look different. There was a couple of times where the internet kind of spiked. The quality of footage of the different people kind of went away, and there were times where we weren't able, like, we froze and we weren't able really to talk well enough for a little bit. But overall, it should be good. The conversation was good. It was a really great interview. There is a slight problem on my end. The ceiling fan above me, I didn't realize because noise canceling headphones. There's gonna be a slight dinging sound. If that gets onto your nerves, I understand. And but I've did my best to try to cancel it out as much as possible. So hopefully, even through all those kind of difficulties throughout the episode, you guys are able to enjoy it. Next week we'll be back on Discord and hopefully have some of these things ironed out for episode 3. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 2 of the CoronaCast. I'm Brad Brewer. We're on Google Hangouts this time, trying to get it's going to look a little bit different because we have a special interview today. Of course, I'm joined by Alex Galbraith, our co-host, but our special guest is Dr. Michele Merritt, a philosophy instructor, professor at Arkansas State University. Thank you for joining us. And we've invited you for, you've been pretty vocal on everything that's kind of happened with the COVID-19 outbreak. But first, can you kind of talk about, I guess, your response as an individual, like as a professor and, as a parent, like how you've kind of responded and taken everything with this outbreak?
Yeah, so it's kind of moved fast. So I remember a few weeks ago just kind of telling my husband that I had read something online that made sense to me, and I'm very skeptical and not prone to being a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I had read something that said we need to prepare for the worst, and it just it resonated with me. So went to the store, bought some toilet paper, not a ton, but and we just kind of got ready for it to get bad, and then it just it snowballed after that. So in some sense, I've been kind of expecting this. Not that I am a prognosticator or anything like that. I just started following it early and knew things were going to get bad. And then in terms of the university, it just you know how it went. It just kind of everything happened so quickly. So I just wasn't surprised, I guess, when finally everything got called off for the rest of the semester. All online, everything. So, yeah.
You said it didn't surprise you, but incorporate kind of moving your classes from, in-person classes to all online. It's definitely a struggle and things you're having to deal with. I mean, you talked a lot about it in your article, and we'll kind of segue to that right now. But before we kind of dive into the article, how has the transition been specifically for online classes? Because you talked about the struggle. How have you kind of aimed your kind of strategy? Like what has been your strategy to moving online and trying to still provide your students kind of the best possible education regarding even in the circumstances?
Yeah, that's definitely been tough, but I consider myself somewhat fortunate that I've always been quick to pick up new technology. I'm not getting super old yet. So I've never taught online. So it was kind of this quick thing that I had to just figure out how to do. And, we have Blackboard and we have all these tools that we can use to provide online lectures. I've done a few things online when I've, been at a conference and I didn't want to completely cancel classes. So I'll have the students do a discussion board or something like that. But I can't do that for the rest of the semester. So I quickly learned how to use Tegrity classes where you can record lectures and put them up for the students. And apparently that grades them on how much they actually watch. So I can tell.
It does?
Yeah.
I didn't, Dr. Pitts uses that. I had no idea it tracks. Oh, no.
Yeah. It tells you a percentage of how much they watched. And of course there's glitches with that too now, because I have students that I trust that are watching the whole thing and they're telling me, I watched the whole thing and it says I have a 90%. And I'm like, oh, whatever, that's fine. You watched it. I can tell. But, I can see the students who watched 5% or 0%. So I mean, that's what I decided to use because it was the quickest, easiest thing to do. We started getting these emails saying we're going to have to prepare to possibly go all online, and I didn't wait. Then I just immediately emailed the IT people and said, "What can I do to kind of record my lectures?" And there was some talk of everything needs to be synchronous, where you need to actually meet with your class at the same time. And I immediately bucked against that because I know that students, once they're off school and they're back home, they have things like, I have students that have children too. I have students who have spouses that have jobs that put them at risk. And so they're in these really stressful situations. And then students who go to a different time zone when they go back home, all the way across the world, even. So you can't expect them to be present at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I figured recording my lectures was going to be the best way to do it. And then they can just kind of watch them as they go. And the rest of the assignments can pretty much stay the same because I teach philosophy, so we have papers that we write and reading questions that go along with the readings. And the final exam remains to be seen how I'm going to do that, but we'll figure that out when we get there. So I mean, in some sense, it wasn't super hard for me to do, but it's definitely more work because I've taught intro to philosophy for years now, and I can just kind of walk in without much thought behind it, and do my lecture in person. It's like a lot of it's in my head, and to kind of have to like go back and make full lecture videos, and then the fact that I hate filming myself. So it's I've had to kind of adapt to that and just get over it. But other than that, it's not been super tricky. I guess when I wrote my article, I was thinking more in terms of the professors that aren't going to have such a seamless transition. I've heard some of my colleagues talking in the halls in the last few weeks, and I could just tell that there was stress in their voices, and not to sound like an ageist or anything, but the older faculty sometimes tend to have a harder time with this kind of stuff. So I was thinking of them. I was thinking of the faculty that are brand new to teaching, and this is like thrown at them. So yeah, I can imagine it's rough.
So you kind of talked about like your students, like if a student watched like 90% of their lecture, you'll still like you're pretty lenient on that, and that's kind of one of the things me and Alex were discussing your article beforehand, and one of kind of he's kind of saw a quote that stuck out to him about kind of like putting in the minimum, and like if a student puts that in, you'll kind of give them the maximum. Alex, if you kind of want to like elaborate on that kind of question and phrase that in the way you kind of want to ask it.
Well, yeah, that was the way you closed the paper. That's how you said it. If you do the minimum, I'll count it maximally, and I couldn't agree more with that. Now, and we'll kind of jump into this here in a little bit. ASU just moved to their credit, non-credit grading system for the remainder of the semester. I know every teacher is different, and every teacher has control over their own class. But you believe that maybe that's how ASU should have chosen to finish the semester in a way of, you put in the bare minimum and I will count it maximally, or, maybe if you don't get this much work done or you don't put in this much effort, not to say lack of effort, because I know some people's situations are different than others, but should teachers go that route? Should every teacher kind of move that direction like you were saying that you would do with your student?
Well, I think, that last line could be misconstrued by some of my fellow faculty members to sound like I'm just going to give everybody an A, or like it doesn't matter how much you work. And I guess it could be interpreted that way, but I meant it more like what you're saying, that just showing up right now, just watching the lectures whenever you can, for me as a professor in my class, but doing the work, putting in the effort, and I'm seeing that you're trying. I'm going to count that more than I might in a normal semester at this point. It's kind of what I meant. And to your question of should other professors adopt that, I mean, I hate to wade into the territory of telling my colleagues what they ought to do. But yeah, kind of, I think we have an obligation right now to recognize that this is a huge stressful situation for everybody in the entire world. And nobody's going to be doing their best, including us. We have to be, as faculty, be easier on ourselves and realize, like, I referenced one of my colleagues, Dr. Barrett Fox, had written an article as well, a blog post about this, how we shouldn't, fall all over ourselves trying to make these perfect online classes. Like, screw it. We're, this is it. We're going to have to finish this semester one way or another. So I've kind of been thinking, like, my students, they're going through the same thing that I'm going through. We're all in this together. And so I want to reward them for just trying. But that being said, there still are standards and expectations. When I said like we should just sort of divorce ourselves from all these traditions, I meant like the traditional way of grading. And I'm very strict actually in most of my classes. People know it's kind of hard to get an A from me typically, but it's more like, yeah, I'm going to relax a lot of those policies, but you still can't cheat. You know, if I get plagiarized papers, like that's still an automatic F as per my syllabus. So I'm still trying to stick to my principles a little bit, but in terms of like, you know, if a student, you know, I've had students already email me saying this, like the tornado, of course, last week, that's a whole other thing. And, you know, they couldn't get to the homework or they didn't have internet or whatever. And like, you have to just say, okay, well, fine, I will leave the assignment up a little longer, or I just won't. Last week I decided just didn't count, like any of the assignments that students didn't get to. It was just extra credit if they did, because I'm like, you know, what am I supposed to do for a week where there's a tornado? So, yeah, I think that's kind of what I meant by that quote.
For sure, yeah. I mean, we're all kind of in a situation dealing with things, students, teachers, everybody, like you said, across the world. Something we've never had to deal with before, and it's very complicated when it definitely comes down to schoolwork on both ends. And one thing that I kind of wanted to ask you, just kind of in the article as a whole, is you wrote this article, and you said a lot of things in this article that maybe a lot of teachers were thinking themselves, or maybe a lot of teachers wanted to say themselves. Maybe they didn't have the guts to do it. Maybe they just didn't want to do it. So what made you kind of come out here and speak out? And then kind of along those lines, did you think maybe in doing so that any action would be taken from the higher administration, that they might listen to an actual professor at their own university and maybe try to go this route?
Are we losing connection? Or is that
Are you there?
Are we
still here? Everybody still here?
That might have been on my end. I don't know if that's on my end. Did you hear the question?
I heard it, I think, to the end of what I thought might be the outcome of the article, or what other professors were thinking. I think I got the gist of the question. Yeah, so I was spurred on to write it because we were having discussions in the faculty email that we were all a part of, faculty. And I started that discussion. I sent an article and I said, what do you guys think about this? This is this article in the Chronicle of Higher Education that suggests we should go all pass-fail right now. I read it and I had already kind of formed my own opinions, but I thought, I'll see what my faculty friends think about this. And it started this heated discussion, and a lot of my colleagues were definitely on board with the idea. And a lot of them had polled their students, you know, sort of like sent out a survey monkey or whatever and said, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How is this affecting you? What sort of stress factors should I know about? You know, and I did the same thing with my students, asked them like what kind of internet they were going to have and all that kind of stuff. But I also asked, what do you think about traditional grading? And I mean, I can't remember the percentage. It was something like 80% of my students wanted this option. And I was getting that from a lot of faculty, that students wanted the option to have a pass-fail or credit, no credit. And there were a few faculty members that were absolutely the opposite and sort of put their foot down about this, that everything should stay the same and students are fine. We don't need to worry about them. And that didn't, sit well with me. So I kind of, after the tornado hit, like the next morning I woke up and just rattled off this article because, I realized, well, look, somebody's got to speak out and speak for the students and the faculty as well. I've never really been one to keep quiet about things on campus, so I don't really have a lot to lose, I guess. I'm not going to get in trouble for writing an article that expresses my opinion, but I suppose some faculty are maybe not in that position. And so, yeah, I spoke for them, spoke for the students, and I guess that's what prompted me to do it, was just thinking that I'm seeing all these other schools, and I have lots of friends that are at different universities, and their schools have gone to this system, and I'm just thinking like I should jump on that bandwagon, so to speak, because somebody needs to get that ball rolling. And now, I mean, it's like funny now how we're having this discussion, and it just happened today that the chancellor sent out the notice. The faculty senate voted on Friday, so I'd like to think that my article had some little small bit to do with that. It was shared quite a bit, so.
Well, did you ever think that it was going to get shared that much?
No, not really, because I've been writing for Medium for a while, and Medium's just this kind of place where you can write whatever you want, and sometimes the stuff will get picked up by the curators and it'll get spun off, and, my stuff has not really done that there. It's just more of a personal space for me to write that's non-academic, but this one just went nuts, and so, I even had the Medium team, wanted me to we did some edits to it, and they wanted to publish it in a more broad venue because they thought it was doing really well. So, that was cool.
Do you have the numbers on how popular, how many, I guess, reads or views that the story got? Do you have that kind of insight?
It tells me how many clicks or reads I get on it. It was 25,000.
Okay.
So not ridiculously viral, but
I mean,
the problem with Medium is that some people have Medium you have to pay for to read a certain. It's kind of like the New York Times where you can only read so many articles per month for free. So I don't know how many people were stopped from reading it because of that, but it did get shared a lot. So
yeah, I mean, that was the first time I've ever read anything on Medium. So I mean, that was you're a brand ambassador already. So you were perfectly segueing into how the university has kind of created this. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, hey, that's completely fine. But yeah, we can go ahead and talk about what the university has done and how you potentially were a spearhead for this new policy. That it seems to be. Alex and I were talking before we kind of began this group call about what exactly this is, and I'm not sure if we can completely understand it. It's pretty new. I mean, it's kind of breaking news was today, but it seems to be kind of an optional credit, no credit system where you can still kind of have your GPA if you want it. So first, can you talk to me how you understand it? I feel like you probably know more than us, or understand it more than us, and what's your opinion on it? How do you feel like it's been handled by A-State?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly what I was hoping would happen, because you can't, as I discussed in the article, you can't just blanket everybody gets pass-fail, because there are, classes where grades are necessary. People are trying to get into graduate programs. I've got my upper division class, I've got a student who's, I think she's already been accepted to some vet programs, but she needs certain classes to Darwin enough to count GPA-wise. So, and you can't just go completely pass-fail. Furthermore, I've got students who are actually earning A's and they're on track to get the A, and it's not fair for them to kind of have the same grade as another person who just barely eked out a C. I think they've done a good job of making that work, where the students can choose after you basically get the grade assigned. Hold on just a second. I think I have to remove my dog because he's freaking out about something. Darwin, come on, man.
I like how she said vet, veterinary or whatever, and then the dog jumped in. I'm like,
like you do.
Yeah, it's like her. It's like, I'm going to vet.
I thought he could be a part of this and be chill, but he's now hearing the kids out there and he wants to go play. So, but yeah, so I think, where was I? The way that the system's set up, it seems to be exactly what other universities are doing. I don't know. I haven't read all the details of different university policies, but basically you give the students the choice, and now it's up to us as instructors, and especially if you have student advisees, to kind of walk them through what they should do, because I've already had a couple students email me today okay, so what do I do? And I'm sure you've read the message, but the way it works is you get the grade you're going to get at the end of the semester. So as faculty, we still assign a grade, and then you have, I guess, what is it now, 2 weeks or something like that to contest the grade, or to say you want to use this catastrophic credit, no credit thing, right? And if you don't, then you just get the grade, and if you do, then you can get the credit, no credit. And the way I'm understanding is that if you take that, if you get an F in a class, you get an F. You might as well just leave it, because I guess if you took the no credit, that might not impact your GPA as much. But you don't get credit for the course the same way an F would work.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the credit option, where it changes things, right? Because you still get the hours, you passed the course that you took, but there's no number assigned to how well you pass. So if you were just barely hanging on, it's not going to like lower your GPA. You pass the class. And that's kind of how I see most students should be able to have that option, because for anybody to even make it through the semester alive at this point is kind of amazing. So yeah, I think that's great. But then I have my students they're A+ students, and they deserve that 4.0, or they're about to graduate and they might be just on the cusp of getting, honors. They needed to up their GPA just a little bit, and they would have gotten cum laude or magna cum laude or something. So this helps everybody. I think it works really well, and I think it was great for A-State to adopt that kind of policy. So I'm pretty happy about it. I don't know how well, I think one of the things that I mentioned maybe sort of only briefly in the article is that for this to really work, it kind of needs to be system-wide, like massive, nationwide acceptance that the semester's just screwed, and nobody should, like people that are applying to grad school, like my husband is he's an engineer, and he's pretty high up in his company, so he does a lot of hiring, and he said, I already know as a person that's going to hire people in the next year or two, like I'm going to look at their transcripts and nobody is going to care that anybody screwed up this semester, So yeah, like people need to have that kind of buy-in and realize that everybody gets a little bit of a pass for this semester.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
All right, and so you kind of mentioned how like you kind of wanted this to be a whole like kind of like you want kind of theoretically every college like in America to accept that this is the kind of approach that they should take, because it is, like you said, the fact that students can survive and still, do their work to even just a mediocre level is impressive because of everything we're going through. What do you have to kind of say about, because I believe I've seen, I think it was Liberty University and a lot of private schools are kind of, still having like class, like they're still like opening their labs and stuff. And so they're still kind of trying to hold on to the semester. What kind of message what would you say to them, especially at this point where it's basically everyone's shutting down and moving towards this online?
Yeah, well, I feel like that's kind of now been, A-State was actually one of the later universities to do this. I was kind of, when this was all happening, I remember the last day I was on campus. I live in Memphis, so I commute. But the last day I was on campus was Thursday the 12th, and I was there for an afternoon kind of thing where we were doing women's history trivia, and I sort of had that feeling like, this is it. I'm not coming back. I could just sort of tell. We had been told next week we'll do that trial run of 2 days where we do online and then we come back, and I was like, that's not going to happen. I can tell you right now, we're just not coming back. And yeah, I think we got the email maybe Sunday or Monday that said, no, we're not doing any more in person. And I was really relieved, because I had kind of already decided I'm just going to do online for that whole week, because Memphis, Shelby County, we've got tons of cases here and deaths, and it's like I don't want to bring the virus to campus. So yeah, I'd kind of already made up that decision for myself, and then luckily it was made at the university level, but we were kind of slow in some sense. And Arkansas, I don't know if you've noticed, but the state of Arkansas just generally is not doing well about locking down. I think they got an F or something on the list of grade. Speaking of grading, they are the least aggressive state in dealing with it right now, thanks to our governor kind of not doing what he needs to be doing, in my opinion. But yeah, so when I see these other universities that still at this point haven't shut down, it's like, I don't even know what to say. It's the same with the people that are still going to massive church services. Like, I get it. That's important to you. That's something that is part of your life, but you're also just like a disease vector right now. You're like walking in and putting yourself at risk and others. So I can't, and then we're seeing, of course, I think it's Liberty that has already had several cases, right, confirmed of the virus ever since they reopened and started back up. And I'm just totally not shocked by that, So, but it's kind of sad that it's just really sad to see that there's going to be more deaths and more illness than necessary because people are being so stubborn about this. So.
For sure. So you bring up Governor Hutchinson and kind of his Arkansas is more lackadaisical approach to just the whole kind of legislative, I guess, approach to making sure people social distance and quarantine themselves. And I saw, because he's tweeting, I believe yesterday, about how we're actually well under the number of projected confirmed cases. But at the same time, we're also in the bottom 5 of states who have been testing per capita. And I did want to kind of get more broad away from just a state, the academic standpoint, to kind of your reaction to, on a state government level and on a federal government level and on an international level, of how what your opinion is on how the world, our nation, and our state has been fighting this. So if you would like to go ahead and expand on Arkansas itself and their approach to combating the virus.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot. I mean, I think it's the entire country was slow to kind of get on board with the idea that we need to be careful. It was, people knew, health officials knew that this was a threat before politicians kind of decided. And I get that there's this tension between the economy and keeping things rolling and keeping people employed and all of that, and then people's lives. But at some point, you just got to say, like, this is a public health crisis. We need to actually do something. And I feel like that was just really slow to happen here. And now we're, in terms of the country, we're the epicenter of the world now for this disease, which is really astounding. And it's, to me, it's just uncovering all sorts of problems with our healthcare system, all sorts of problems with people's access to care, and the stockpiling of resources that we supposedly have that we don't have, apparently. And I mean, there's just so much that you could talk about, right? And I try to not make it political because that's a whole other issue, but it's kind of the administration has not done the best job, in my opinion, on a national or state level. But that kind of applies to many states, because I don't think anybody really saw this coming, or at least politicians didn't see this coming, or they were ignoring that it was coming, or I don't know. And so everybody's just kind of gotten caught with their pants down, so to speak. It's just like suddenly now we're expected to have 2,000 deaths a day for the next week in the country. So that's just horrifying. And so, yeah, I don't know what to say about Arkansas legislation other than to kind of compare it with Tennessee, where I am. And it's, Tennessee is not much better, but we did, at least here in Shelby County, our mayor has just been kind of like doing his own thing and saying, no, everybody needs to stay home, everybody needs to shelter in place. And I think he was at least one of those proactive types. And you're seeing like different, states and different counties and stuff kind of take their own approach. And I think that's good that they're going kind of going rogue against the president or the governor or whatever. And that's what I really liked about Chancellor Danfoss's response, is he just kind of went ahead and made the call, even though our governor was kind of dragging his feet, still is dragging his feet, hasn't said, that we should all stay home. So it's, yeah, I don't know if I'm answering the question. There's so many things I could say, but
I want to get Alex to kind of ask a question or get his point in, but I do kind of want to say, like, you try not to make it political, and to a point, I kind of agree, like, it shouldn't be a political issue, because there have been, regardless if you're like on the Republican or Democrat side, like there have been successes, there have been things people have done well and things people have not done well. I mean, we saw like in New York City before, like New York City, which is the epicenter naturally. I mean, you can't help that. It's just you have so many millions of people compacted on this island. But they seem to be pretty chill about it at first, to the point where it probably did allow it to become worse faster than it could have been contained. So yeah, I definitely believe this. Like I'm kind of with you, especially on the states, because how New York City and how New York is facing this entire thing is a completely different process and way that states like Arkansas is. But that's my opinion on it. Alex, do you have any points or thing to say or questions?
Well, I fully agree with both of you. I think you made the point about how some schools or within maybe your own county, mayors, whoever it needs to be, are kind of jumping the gun and making the decision themselves. And I think that's what we have to do during this time, is you can't wait around for someone to make the decision for you, whether that be a president or a governor or whoever it may be. If the problem is there within your own county, at your school, within your city, whatever, someone's got to put a stop to it. You can't wait for someone to put a stop to it for yourself, So I wholeheartedly agree with that. So while we might not be listening to the higher up officials, what we're doing is really the right thing. And one thing I wanted to ask you, Doctor, is your husband. You said he's an engineer. He's kind of high up in his company. Is he still going to work during this time?
No, he's always worked from home, so we're kind of in this really fortunate place where like we already do this. I mean, I teach on campus 2 days a week, and I do a lot of my research at home. So he works from home. I'm actually in his office right now because it's quiet in here. He's not had to go anywhere, and I consider ourselves pretty fortunate in that regard.
No, absolutely. That was going to be my follow-up question: is if he did, kind of how you combat that with him coming home and taking the proper, I guess, being clean and getting, kind of everything disinfected and stuff like that. Kind of the actions that you're taking within your house, but you're under house arrest. You're home most of the time, so I guess it works out pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, we're taking it very seriously. I've got a 10-month-old and a 3-year-old, and I don't want them to get sick. And I know kids are kind of a little more robust, apparently, with this, but also more and more we're finding out that the virus is not discriminating. So I obviously want to protect them, and so we hardly leave the house. We get everything delivered, and that brings up another point though about the different states' reactions. There's this tendency to just like look at the South, and I don't know if you've seen some of these like heat maps of cell phones and like people that are still traveling in like the South. Again, it's like Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, everybody's driving around everywhere still, and it's terrible. And I'm from Florida, and Florida is completely screwed up the whole thing because the spring break situation there. That's where I grew up, and I was supposed to be there over spring break to visit family, and I didn't go. But when you see those cell phone heat maps and you see everybody's moving around still, and it's easy to kind of look at that and say, well, everybody's just stupid, or what the heck? Why are people still not isolating? But there's so many complex layers, right? There's the fact that if you live in a city like New York, it's really easy to get groceries delivered or to just walk really close by your apartment and go grab some things and not be out long. But we have lots of food deserts here in the South. Like people cannot get food delivered to them. They can't, even in Memphis, there's limited food delivery. It's not the biggest city in the world, but imagine living out in rural Arkansas where you have to drive for 10 miles just to get to a big grocery store. And so we have to take that into consideration too. And that's like, then I can kind of sympathize with lawmakers not wanting to fully lock people down, because you can't lock down people who are essential workers or super poor, and the only thing they can do is drive to the Walmart in the next county and hope that there's food there, So again, I consider myself super fortunate because we have the means to just order Kroger click list or whatever, and everything's delivered, and we spray everything down with Lysol like crazy, and we're just not taking any chances. But there's some people that just they can't help but take chances. So,
and you bring up a really good point about the heat maps and just the different situations and the layers and stuff, and why people may be going out. And that's why, and you kind of sympathize with lawmakers in that sense. And I agree with you. And I honestly think the best way to combat this is because if you make laws and legislations and mandates, to a point, yeah, definitely. Hopefully martial law is never really declared, but to a point, you have to do that. But I feel like right now, the word, almost the spread, celebrities are honestly doing a really good thing. I think the whole, it's more of a personal responsibility that I feel like for the most part, a lot of people are doing a really good job on. What is your opinion on the response of the general populace and how they've reacted and how they are taking social distancing really seriously?
It's so hard. It's hard for me to tell really, because I've seen the heat map, so I've been seeing that people are still definitely moving around a lot more than they should be in the South. But then, like I said, I have this understanding of why that might be, and I've got my small social media bubble of friends that will all be doing their part, and then of course we're not going anywhere, so I don't know. Every now and then I'll get in the car to go pick up the groceries or something, and or just go out to a deserted park that I can go for a run in or something. But I see a lot of people still driving around, and I think to myself, what the hell are these people doing? But then I'm driving around too, So I guess it's really hard to tell how serious people are taking this. I do know I have personally some family that are not doing a great job of being serious, and it's highly frustrating to me to kind of hear about that and hear about how they're putting their families at risk. And there's nothing I can do about it other than just, passive aggressively post stuff on Facebook and try to make them feel bad. But,
you're exactly. It is hard to tell. Brad and I live generally in this same area, Central Arkansas, and I know of people that are, going out to these parks or to these areas and they're having picnics or they're hiking Pinnacle Mountain out here, and everybody's passing each other on these hikes or sitting with each other at the top of these mountains, or maybe playing a big game of kickball or whatever. And you do question that. Those are things that aren't essential. You don't have to go out and do that, especially in a time like this. You do, for some people, have to go out and get groceries, or you do have to go pick up things that you need within your house. But things like that are things that don't need to be done, no matter how great the weather may be. And you are certainly putting a lot of people at risk, not just people you pass, but people within your family as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big triathlete. I do lots of outdoor stuff, and lately I've just been kind of staying within like a 3-mile radius of my house when I go out for a run or a walk, and it's pretty short anyways because now the kids are home, so I have to kind of can't be going out for like 3-hour workouts anymore. All my races are canceled anyways, but I even being out in my neighborhood, it's like we have these huge wide streets, and I stay really far away from people when I see them. But we just don't know like how easily this thing spreads. There's like discussion about it being spread even when you're just talking to somebody through the air, and I've seen estimates that it can travel as much as 15 feet, not just 6 or whatever. And so I'm not like super worrywart kind of person, but I definitely keep my distance even in the outside. It's nice to get out and get some fresh air in the beautiful weather, but not worth it to go to like a crowded trail. So it's kind of, in Tennessee we've got these rails to trails kind of things, and I just haven't been going there because this is like 6 feet max that you're talking about, and you're going to pass people, and I'm not taking my chances. And I just don't know because I see people post pictures from different places, like you said, hiking and being out on the Greenway in Atlanta or whatever, and just like tons of people milling about. Doesn't look good.
Not at all.
So, we've kind of been, a little bit negative the past few minutes talking about the bad side. But I do think, I personally, maybe I'm just being kind of weirdly optimistic. I'm someone who's kind of a pessimist when it comes to these things. But I feel like I've seen a lot of people taking it seriously in like different bubbles. Of course, there are the bad apples, but what are some silver linings from this? Because I feel like there's a lot of unity to come from this, right? I mean, we're all kind of fighting a common enemy. So what kind of things, right now that maybe you see some silver linings personally in your life, or, generally for our just world and its health? I know climate's a big thing. I've seen, the Venice canals, you're seeing those clear up. So what are some silver linings that you can think of to kind of have a positive impact on our world through a dark time where we're kind of focusing on the negatives more than the positives?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that's how I've been kind of surviving, is to think about how this is like good for us as a family, good for us as a community, good for us as a nation. And I mean, it's not great that we're losing lives, but maybe the kind of wake-up call that we needed to realize that so much of what we do, so many trips we take in our cars are unnecessary. So yeah, the environmental impact, I'm hoping that there's some positive, ripple effect to that, although I'm a little skeptical of people just going right back to their usual ways. But like lots of meetings, lots of things can be done online. At the same time, we're recognizing that a lot of stuff can't be done online. Like, I think there is something about interpersonal interaction, like real physical interaction, that needs to happen. As a teacher, I don't love teaching online. I like seeing my students in person. I miss them. I miss seeing their faces and everything. But there's a lot of faculty meetings that could certainly be held online. We don't have to go into the office for that. So there's some of that stuff that's been nice to not have to deal with. And I know, a lot of people are hurting financially right now. So this is going to sound awful and privileged, but for my family, like, we're saving money right now. We're not driving anywhere. All the trips we had planned for the next few months, we've got all the money back from the, condos or whatever that we rented. It's like, okay, so we're just now at home ordering groceries. And it's kind of, I guess, what that's teaching our family is that, like, we can do a lot together here with each other without having to, like, entertain ourselves outside of the house. So the bond that we share is maybe getting stronger when we're not driving each other insane. Yeah, so I just hope that people kind of take this time to reflect and realize, like, there's a lot of stuff that we've been sort of taken for granted, and there's also a lot of, totally off the subject or kind of off in another direction, but I've just been thinking about how this discussion of masks lately has got people kind of now thinking about how, I was just listening to a podcast the other day, like, that masks have been worn in Asian countries for forever. Like, that's just what they do as part of their culture to kind of prevent the spread of germs and infections and whatnot. And we're starting to realize, like, that's not so ridiculous now. In fact, it's just been recommended that everybody wears a mask right now in public. And it's not because you're protecting yourself. It's because you're protecting others that you might be spreading. And sort of that opens up a space to think about how culturally myopic we can be. And we think, like, these other people, these Asian people or whatever, they do things like that. And that's weird. But, like, now we're realizing, like you said, we're all in it together. And maybe this will make us more fully globally aware of each other, and that is my most positive spin I can give to this right now.
Yeah,
it's terrible and awful.
I am pretty optimistic in the sense that there are positive impacts. And I like the point you made about the mask, because my friend Krista, one time, she went to a class and she was feeling under the weather, and she wore a mask, but everyone was kind of like, whoa, like, that's kind of like you're confessing that you're sick. But, like, if I show up and I'm coughing, whatever, people are more chill with it. But if I'm not wearing a mask, but I'm endangering them more if I'm wearing a mask. So there are some weird, just weird elements of our culture that this is definitely addressing. I want to give Alex one more chance as we kind of wrap up here. If he has any questions or anything he has to say. I mean, if you have any ideas of, silver linings that you've seen from this so far.
No, yeah, I'm definitely out of questions. We hit a lot in this discussion, so that's great. But no, silver linings, though, one thing I definitely noticed is I think we all do, take a lot of stuff for granted, such as going out and driving, or maybe going out and interacting outside or with other people, going to the movies, whatever it may be, stuff that we could normally do on a regular basis whenever we wanted, now we can't. And I think we do take that out, or take that for granted a little bit. But I know one thing for me, a silver lining, it has been the quality family time you're able to get. We're gone to college. Your parents are usually working. Whatever happens, now you're all together at home. And that's something that you don't get very often, at least for an extended period of time. And I can't remember who said it, but one person made a great point. He goes, everybody has something that they want to do. Maybe it's a project they've wanted to work on, or a book they've wanted to read, or whatever. Because now's the time you can have to do that. Now's the time you can take up this new hobby. Now's the time that you can spend the time with the people that you wanted to do it with. Whatever it is, you've got tons of time on your hands to get that done now. And I think that's a big silver lining, because I know I've got a bunch of stuff that I've been putting off because I've been busy at school, or I've got schoolwork that I've had to do, whatever it may be. And now there's no excuse for that. So now I can actually put my mind and get that stuff done. So while it's not the definitely ideal situation, it's nothing that no one wanted to have to go through. There's still plenty of, I think, a little bit of positive to come out of this.
Yeah. I mean, totally, that's how I've been looking at it. But then I also recognize that for a lot of people, time is not something that, I've been seeing a lot of I'm bored kind of discussion, and I laugh at that because I've got two very young kids. I'm not bored, and they're home. Like, I'm not bored, and I actually am really glad that some of my races that I was signed up for got canceled, because I wouldn't be able to train for them right now with the schedule that we're having to keep, and we're trying to kind of like keep my 3-year-old on his school program, and that's frustrating. But yeah, I mean, so some people don't have this extra time to take up a new hobby, but I've definitely been much more prolific in my writing. Like I've just been writing all the time, and so one of the things that I kind of thought about, because I had time to reflect and really observe my child more, because he's home all the time, is like how much emotionally this is impacting him and how screwed up it's going to make so many kids to have lived through this, especially these really young kids. I read another article about that recently, that the trauma that they're going through is kind of ambiguous traumas. They don't understand exactly what it is, but they know something's wrong. And he's, my 3-year-old, he's just kind of like, he's not normal right now. He's out of sorts. Everything's disrupted, and he doesn't understand what it means to have a pandemic, but he keeps saying the virus is here and it's bad. And so it really caused me as a parent to reflect on what I'm doing, modeling behavior to him that will help him. Because, 20 years from now, this, like, his generation is going to be like the generation that was brought up during a pandemic. I mean, that's unprecedented. And we know from other disasters and things like Katrina that Hurricane Katrina, people that live through that, kids especially, have like PTSD symptoms well into the future from going through that. And I really think we have to be careful about our young kids right now. Like, how are they going to react to this? And that's a whole other issue, but it's something that as a parent, it's a silver lining, because I don't know that I would have really thought about how emotionally fragile he is at this stage in his life until this happened. And I realized, oh my gosh, I might be contributing to his damage. I should stop. I should stop being so obsessive about cleaning or whatever. Yeah. So silver lining, flush, terrifying.
Yeah, but it's a good thing, that you're there to talk about that with him. You're observing that, but as parents, you're able to actually maybe help them through that. I know some people, some are still having to go to work, or there are a handful of daycares that are still open, which just baffles me that we're keeping daycares open. Which I understand for parents that still have to work, and maybe they don't have an option for childcare, but that seems like a very hot spot for a bunch of germs and stuff. So, but stuff like that, it's a good thing that you and your husband, or whoever it is there to help them through that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, that's all I personally have. If Dr. Merritt, if you have any final words, if if you have a message of whatever. I know wash your hands is the message we all want to have, and all of these reminders. But if there is a message or anything you want to say, or whether it's a warning, whether it's some source of inspiration, or just really anything you want to say. This is kind of the last shot to just, get whatever you have off your chest.
Give us your best philosophical quote.
Yeah, that's a good one.
No, my best philosophical quote right now would probably anger people.
Well, we want to hear it.
Well, the quote that's been ringing in my mind recently, and I don't even know who said this. This is terrible, but it's just kind of a saying that I've been thinking about, is that people are really not interested in the truth. They're more interested in people agreeing with what they think is the truth. So sort of like basically confirming for them, confirmation bias. And there's been a lot of that lately that's been in my mind. But mostly I'm just thinking about this practically in terms of my students and my colleagues, like just thinking about how we all need to really be easy on ourselves and on each other, and care for each other, and stop insisting, like I said in my article, that this is normal at all. There's no more normal right now. This semester is completely shot, and give yourself a break, but also give your students a break, and just recognize that fact and kind of check in with your students. I've been constantly emailing my students saying, like, I really want to hear from you. I want you to tell me how you're feeling. And, it's not typically the kind of professor I am. I'm not super touchy-feely, but, like, this is what we need to be doing, because we're all isolated. I think Dr. Danfus said we should really stop saying social isolating. It's physical isolation that we're in, but we shouldn't be social distancing. So we need to talk to each other and check in. You can't just assume that your friend's okay. I mean, I'm already finding friends that are friends of friends, or friends' parents, friends' sisters, whatever, that are sick with this. Like, it's going to happen. We're going to know somebody who knows somebody, or know somebody who gets sick from it, and we should check on each other, because our mental health is suffering greatly, I'm sure. So
yeah, that's a interesting segue, because the next guest on our podcast is a friend of mine who is a manager at a grocery store, who had to go to work and stuff, and now might potentially have COVID-19 virus, or at the least, she said it was like a severe respiratory illness. So that's I guess the cliffhanger to watch episode 3. But thank you very much, Dr. Merritt, for joining us. Very interesting. I knew we'd have a great conversation, a lot of insight. Do you have any like shout outs for any possibly any charities you have, or like your charities support, or your Twitter handle, your whether we can read your works, more works of yours on Medium or any other publications? That is your time. This time you're promoting yourself.
No, I don't like to promote myself, but you can Medium, my Medium page. That's where I've been writing a lot of stuff lately. I'm adopted, and I've been dealing with kind of finding out about my birth family now, my old age, and that's really interesting. So that's been kind of my focus lately, is to kind of think about adoption. So in terms of charities, like one of the big charities that I support lately is called Saving Our Sisters. It's a group that works to help mothers who are contemplating adoption, and sort of talk to them and find ways to support them to keep their children, because it's kind of not usually the focus is to kind of like promote adoption, and instead to kind of promote parenting and promote family preservation. And it's probably the weirdest charity you'll ever hear about, because not a lot of people think about that. But as somebody who's been adopted myself, it's something that's I've thought about a lot for my whole life. So especially in a time that does kind of have relevance, because in a crisis situation like this, there's a lot of very poor parents who are having trouble parenting and contemplating abandoning their children, or putting them up for adoption, and that's just tragic. So talk to me if you ever want to find out there are other ways to go about the situation. So
all right. I mean, I agree. There are definitely many overlooked causes that need to be addressed. Once again, thank you for joining us. And that'll be it for episode 2 of the CoronaCast. We'll see you next week, where we will interview, my personal friend who might have come down with the novel coronavirus.